Coon wants to talk about hero stuff.
Help me bring supers back into the sunlight. We need Elastigirl.
Bye, sweetie.
Hola, comrades. Today's topic of interest, The Incredibles 2. As the release date of this film approaches, a general excitement builds. Even those who wrongfully ignored Coco, Pixar's beautiful Dia de los Muertos inspired 2017 instant classic, can't wait for this film to be released. Part of this is pure nostalgia. It has been over a decade since the original film was released.
You're that kid from the fan club.
I'm your #1 fan!
Some of those who enjoyed the original film as kids have kids of their own now. However, I will give credit where credit is due. People would not be this nostalgic for the first Incredibles movie if the film had not been good. This flick, which launched director Brad Bird into the national spotlight, is the good Fantastic Four movie that we never got. It is a moving family adventure, and it is a heartfelt narrative that has rightfully been held up as one of the best stories Pixar has ever concocted. Admittedly, it doesn't measure up to Brad Bird's follow-up, Ratatouille, which had more memorable and substantial characters, as well as more compelling atmosphere and aesthetic, and it's not as thoughtfully constructed and beautifully innovative as Inside Out or Toy Story 3. There's also the matter of the film's undoubtedly Randian overtones, which were not intentional but cannot be ignored. This film tries for a common theme among movies directed at a younger audience, which is that it is important to be yourself. I've always seen this message as controlling and banal, even when I was a little kid. I was more than a bit antisocial as a child. To be myself, as it were, would be to sulk alone. I didn't want that. I wanted to change. I wanted more, and I didn't see what was wrong with that. To be frank, I still don't, though my critique has expanded. The truth, I've come to realize, is that who you are, especially when you're a kid, is nothing but a reflection of a certain set of influences that you take to be your identity, without making any conscious choices. You don't have a strong sense of identity yet. So what's so wrong with letting another set of influences work themselves on you? You might learn something about yourself. The be yourself messages in these stories always come down to favoring merely one set of influences over another. The self isn't merely something you are, but something you become. A real story about identity involves learning and growing and challenging perceptions about the world and drilling down to the core of what you thought you believed and realizing that you don't have any logical or emotional attachment to those so-called beliefs. You just kept hold of them because it was less stressful to do so in a society quick to shut down any converse opinions that challenge those in power, or because you were too unstable or scared to examine and excoriate the innate perceptions and philosophies that informed on what you thought you had a good reason for believing. But it is not important that you go down that deep. A be-yourself story can be fine when it's properly told, and The Incredibles is well told. The problem is that The Incredibles conflates being yourself with being better than everyone else, at least when you're a superhero. It depicts society as being a strain on a small class of elites who are better than everyone else and need to be free of rules and regulations and standards of decency and conduct. This class of people need to be unburdened, or else society will collapse into dystopia. It's kind of ugly when you think about it. However, while I can't pretend these abhorrent overtones don't bother me, I love films with far worse politics, such as The Dark Knight. Lines like, "When everyone's super, no one is," anger me, yeah, but the film works well enough from a character and narrative standpoint that I'm able to regard it as one of the best superhero movies of the 2000s. So why is it that I'm not as enthused as the rest of you about the sequel? I've tweeted enough about my problems with this film, and even if you don't follow me on Twitter, you know about my grievances because I voiced them on my recent video on Super Mario Galaxy 2, which dealt with the difficulty of crafting great sequels. Eventually I realized I had enough material for a full video, so here we are. My criticism of The Incredibles 2 is this. The setup is weak. Embarrassingly weak, I might add. Sure, it might be possible for them to forge a decent movie out of this. Even after the abject disaster that was Tomorrowland, I still trust in Brad Bird. But judging from the promotional material, it's pretty clear there was no need for this sequel to be made. When does The Incredibles 2 pick up? Why, right after the conclusion to The Incredibles 1. Genius. Truly genius. A testament to creative intellect right there. Okay, I'll stop being sarcastic. But if there's any sequel that should have taken place a long time after the original, this is it. It's about a superhero family. You could have made the second movie take place when the kids are grown up and starting families of their own with non-supers, and they would have to deal with the responsibility that comes with knowing that they are dragging ordinary people whom they care about into a deeply dangerous lifestyle. The significant others of superheroes tend to be kidnapped or killed, so is it fair to burden someone with that risk? Is it right? And as for the parents, they could reflect on their legacies as superheroes, while trying to help their kids out best they can, even as they struggle with the twin existential difficulties of dealing with becoming empty nesters, and finding that their skills as superheroes are declining with age. See that? I don't mean to brag, but I took less than 5 minutes to think that up, and it's vastly superior to the plot that a team of professionals came up with for their 9-figure blockbuster that's probably going to make 10 figures worldwide. There are a lot of flaws I will forgive, but one I will absolutely not is intellectual laziness. The first trailer they released, I really hope there's more to the film than that. From what I've seen, it's all about Elastigirl fighting crime while drumming up support for the return of the supers, while Mr. Incredible stays at home with the kids and becomes the butt of dumb dad who doesn't know how hard it is to raise kids jokes. These jokes have never been funny, and they've been passé since long before I was born. Mom goes to work while dad stays home. Gah, what is this madness? I mean, just because your superhero costumes look like they're from the 70s doesn't mean your film needs to act like it's still the 70s. Of course, we know what will happen by the third act. Mr. Incredible and the kids will show up and help Elastigirl save the day and defeat the villains. True, I am sure they will throw in a lot of little complications that will make the movie wittier and more enjoyable to watch, and I know there's a lot that has not been shown yet, but the purpose of a movie trailer for a sequel is to showcase what's new, not what's the same. And if this is the best they've got, then I reckon Incredibles 2 is just going to be a retread of the first film. About a decade ago, Brad Bird said that he would only make The Incredibles 2 if he came up with an idea superior to that which was used in the first film. Based on what he seems to have gone with, either he changed his mind or he was lying. And it didn't have to be this way. Advancing the movie forward chronologically would have forced the film to be different, because the characters would have changed, and the relationship dynamics would have been different. If nothing else, Bird would have had an excuse for waiting so long to make another Incredibles film. DreamWorks, for all its faults, has gotten a lot of mileage out of spacing out the sequels to How to Train Your Dragon. Hiccup was only 15 in the first film, but he's 20 in the second, and the difference in ages leads to a difference in conflicts. The first film is about him finding acceptance, while the second is about him becoming a leader. Even Pixar has gotten mileage out of this with Toy Story 2, and especially Toy Story 3. Think about Toy Story 3 for a sec. It is explicitly about problems that arise with the passing of time and the transition from one era to another. Why couldn't they have done that here? Incredibles 2 might be a good film, but it will not be a good sequel. A good sequel is about expanding on the ideas and the characters introduced in the first film, and that is not happening here.
On peace and happiness! Soon all will tremble.
Do companies make unimaginative sequels because they're out of ideas, or because they believe the public just wants the same spectacle over and over again? Both are depressing thoughts, and both speak profoundly to the industry's lack of respect for its audience. If we're going to keep making superhero films, we need more films that challenge the status quo, that tell new kinds of stories with new kinds of characters. We need more superhero films like Black Panther. Hopefully that film's success will encourage Hollywood to open its mind a little when considering which superhero films make the most money. I personally am sick and tired of watching film after film where an awkward slubby dude learns that with great power comes great responsibility. The genre isn't just problematic for its traditional exclusion of women and minorities and its trappings of fascist authoritarianism, it's also plain boring, and I want better. Anyway, if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce even more superheroic content. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that incredible stuff. Adios, comrades!